Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. My name is Robert Greco, and I am the legal director here at SpeakUp. I'm joined with our esteemed CTO, Arun, and I'm very excited for our conversation today on the AI Act and the adoption of artificial intelligence and tools built with artificial intelligence into technology generally, and specifically here, what we're thinking about AI in the context of SpeakUp. Arun, welcome. Maybe we can start by asking you, as a CTO, what excites you about implementation of artificial intelligence within technology generally?
Yeah, so in the last 2 years or so, I'd say a lot of more advanced models have come out, like the general AI models. We used to have only very specific small models that could do one task very well. And now we have models that can do a multitude of tasks. And we're still trying to explore what task it actually can do. It can do so much that we don't know yet. All the things that we can do with it. That's exciting.
It's exciting, and I guess for the lawyers, it's a little bit concerning because nobody wants to hear, we don't know, but we're excited about what we don't know. But I think all the technologists and people who are developing are thinking about all these wonderful use cases. And we've seen some already in the marketplace. I think ChatGPT has an enormous user base on a daily basis, Mistral with Claude, and generally speaking, there seems to be adoption. So I think people are understanding how they can leverage the tools in a way that will help them to be more efficient, to be more productive. But there are some challenges with that. What is it that we are going to be using this technology for in our personal lives, or even in our professional lives, or in the context of a corporation? And I think that we have the AI Act now, and we're attempting to create some areas where you need to be cautious with the development of the tool. You need to be a little bit forecasting into the future how you could see the tool used for good and the tool used potentially for less good purposes. So I'm often thinking about it in the context of GDPR, which some may say came a little bit late, but we understood generally how companies were using personal information, again, for the good and the not so good. And then in the context of AI, we have a number of limitations. We have things that are prohibited. We have things that are considered high risk. We have things that are lower risk, which I think the vast majority of tools will probably fall into over time. And then we have minimal risk, things like video games and the creation of documentation for people in their personal life, creating a CV, et cetera. These are things that are not necessarily concerning to us. But we see OpenAI, we see large language models. These have, in a lot of ways, come after the adoption of the law and really the drafting of the law. What are some of the things that you see that we could potentially be doing with these large models that you see as being for good?
Yeah, so I think the most seen application is just to make repetitive tasks more easy. Summarization, structuring data, that's all stuff that these general models are really good at. Also really good at translating niche dialects, for example. That's something that we didn't used to see in the earlier translation models.
Yeah, definitely.
So those are very useful applications for sure. There's also a creative aspect. People like to create new images and recently also videos with AI. Yeah, that's very positive, exciting stuff.
And then on the flip side, where it becomes maybe less good, a little bit concerning, or even potentially bad for society, how do you see us creating a fine line? Is it a general ethical consideration? Do we need the law to be more specific in order to give very clear guidelines as to what should be built and what shouldn't be built? How do you grapple with that?
Yeah, I think where it gets risky is where AI can have impact on human beings. So as long as you do something for yourself, you're in control. But when AI starts deciding the fate of other human beings, then especially general AI has the risk of not being very transparent.
Definitely. And I think already we've seen some of the risks of bias, and we've seen the lack of transparency challenge to actually mitigate risk, because so much is happening behind the scenes that at least a mere mortal like me with absolutely no technological understanding of how the model would work would understand what's going on in the background. So I think that one of the things that I'm concerned about from a legal perspective is we have all of these great layers of prohibition that are, or prohibition or at least caution that are structured in the act. But with general AI, the potential scope is something that really we don't have the ability to understand, I think. I think that the use cases for which we will see applications built have not fully been understood yet. So is that something to you that is exciting, or is that something to you that is sobering? Because to me, it's a little bit sobering because it feels as though everything washes over you and you think, wow, I can't really see the future at all anymore.
Yeah, so I think it's a mix of exciting and sobering.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a normal evolution of technology.
Mm-hmm.
You find out certain new technologies, then you try to find applications, you test it a lot, and certain applications work and others don't. Sometimes just because the technology is not good enough, and other times because we figure out that the impact on human beings is too big. We've got privacy issue, ethics issues.
Yeah.
So I think it's a normal evolution. I don't think it should stop us from exploring applications. I think that's the best thing we can do at this moment. See what we can use it for, test it a lot, and then decide, is this good enough to keep using, or should we restrain it legally, or just decide that it's not useful?
I think that's it's a really good point. I think it's balanced, and a balanced approach is always something that we should be striving for. I think generally in the creation of tools that many people are going to be relying on, but also in the creation of laws that will manage the use of these tools through fines or potentially even criminal action, depending on how it's being used. We're sitting here in Amsterdam, in the EU, and the law is applying to us, but the law will also apply much more broadly beyond our borders. And I think that for a number of technology companies that are operating primarily outside of the EU, but are selling into the EU or have EU citizen clients or consumers, this is quite a heavy additional piece of regulation and is being treated in some ways almost in the same manner that GDPR was when it was being adopted. How do you feel about the EU sort of being on the forefront, even if we're early, even if we haven't necessarily got it right, to set the expectation as to, okay, what is a good use that doesn't negatively impact humans versus what is a bad use that is negatively impacting humans? Do you think that we're overreaching? Do you think that it makes sense somebody needs to be first? Like, how do you grapple with that?
It's not easy to come up with one plain answer to that.
Okay.
So I think we can see that in other parts of the world, like the United States and in China, there's less regulation. They've taken giant leaps with technology, with AI in particular.
Certainly, yeah.
And it's impressive to see what they can do. And that can benefit humankind in a big way.
Yeah,
But sometimes it comes to bite us after a while.
definitely.
I feel quite comfortable being in the EU, being somewhat restricted, having people think about, okay, this could also have negative impacts. Yeah, of course, it does restrict us a bit because, as someone in engineering, you like to try out new things.
Right.
And of course, the reason is most of the time positive, but you like to try out new things. And it does feel a bit restrictive. I also think the act didn't really take into account these general models.
Right.
It's very much tuned at the time where maybe insurance companies would try to aggregate data to say something about should we insure this person or not. I'm very glad that is restricted.
Definitely.
But we've got so many new, also creative applications, and I think it's going to be a challenge for the creators of these models to fully comply with the act as it currently stands.
I would agree completely.
And for example, one of the rules is preventing bias.
Yeah.
And the hard thing about preventing bias is that you can only prevent bias if you have equal amounts of data about all the different aspects that you can measure. But sometimes you just don't have enough data. So how are they going to fix that gap?
And then you get into the questions of the collection of the data. Where is it coming from? Is it of a good quality? Is it biased in its own right? Yeah, I think it's a very complicated question, but one that any party that's looking to build or leverage these models will have to keep in mind. So I think that the next question that comes to mind is, do you feel as though you have enough information from vendors when you are looking to retain a new tool, or when you are demoing something, or when you're going to our cloud infrastructure providers, that they are acting in a way that is thinking at least about compliance with the law? Because I know that everybody is rushing right now to try and ensure that they're compliant. But when you have those conversations in the broader space, do you feel as though everybody is really taking these considerations to heart and thinking about, okay, how are we deploying these very interesting but still novel applications?
I think they are trying. And of course, there's a big marketplace out there for different model suppliers. Of course, we choose the safer options, the providers that have some assurances around their models. And you can see that they're trying to comply. And you can also see that in the quality of the output. So sometimes...
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
I know that scientists have been busy trying the output of OpenAI's model. And over time, on certain topics, the quality has decreased.
Okay.
Because they've put so much guardrails around it, that now the quality you get back is lower than you used to get in the beginning.
Very interesting.
So that is a good sign that they're trying to comply. You also see that in copyright issues, for example. In the earlier versions of the model, you could get a lot of copyright material out of it,
yes.
And they've restricted that. So I think those are all good and natural developments. Yeah, it's a sign that the providers are busy with it.
I think that's great. I think that shows that, contrary to what some may believe, that everything is completely profit-driven, that there is still some adherence to the law and the desire to build something that is sustainable over time so that it doesn't have these massive negative impacts that people sometimes associate with a misunderstanding, I think, of AI implementation. So with that in mind, how do you see AI capabilities in the context of SpeakUp, our platform, and where you would like to go in the betterment of our platform and our general service providing?
Yeah, so what we see, of course, we facilitate a process that necessarily involves a lot of human decision making. It also has a repetitive element in it. So that gives us the opportunity to help our users decrease the repetitive element, but we definitely keep in mind the human decision making. For example, we will give recommendations. We use AI to give recommendations, but we've chosen to always be very transparent where those recommendations come from. So we have the recommendation on one side, and on the other side quotes, okay, this is where it came from. And we also are very careful in not making decisions. So automations based on AI
I'm happy to hear that.
are very risky.
Yeah.
So we'd rather give a good suggestion, have a human review it, and then make the final decision.
I am very relieved to hear that. Obviously, I know the way that we have conceptualized it, but to hear it in practice and also to see the product and how it's working is really great, because the transparency aspect, I think, from a legal and an ethical perspective, is amongst the most concerning elements of the development of the space. And as a company in the space that we're in, it's great to see that we are very much about transparency. It's one of the reasons that I'm really excited to be part of this team and to join Arun. And I think that's probably it for our conversation today, unless, Arun, you had any additional insightful points that you think are valuable to our listeners and our watchers.
I think we're always busy trying out the latest technology. Of course, the latest iteration of models is real-time, quicker input and output, audio to audio. Yeah, we're busy building prototypes, trying out to see if we can find even newer applications to make the lives of compliance people easier.
That's very cool. And thank you so much for joining me for the conversation today. Hopefully we didn't put you on the spot too much with some of the questions, but it was a great conversation. I certainly learned quite a bit about how these things are conceptualized within your head and the direction that we're going. And again, I'm very much happy to be part of the team and to work with you to deliver the best possible platform to our customers using all of these great new tools. Thank you very much. If you would like to learn more about the platform or about the AI Act and AI compliance and what SpeakUp is doing in the space, please be sure to check out our resources at www.speakup.com. These podcasts are only the beginning of the content that we will be providing to our viewers and our followers. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.